whether it will actually save,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So shall we wait a few minutes to
Yeah,
see if
let's wait
anyone...
maybe about, I don't know, 2 minutes. I wouldn't give them a whole
Okay.
ton of time.
Okay. And perhaps we can use our time to good purpose. I have read over your requirements and your use cases.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I don't know, a pile of use cases, 20 some odd, whatever. No, maybe it's 15. But how can I put this? We can go through. What I would propose would be for me to alter our normal demo by going through a very brief overview of things that aren't in the use cases, and then just start trying to address the specific use cases, unless you
Yeah, I
would
think that's
prefer that
fine.
I do our standard demo that may or may not address the use cases.
No, 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 no. I think that's totally fine. I mean, the less, the more we see of the product, the better.
Okay.
I mean,
And
that's really what we're looking at.
sure. And could you remind me, although I know we did talk about it, the next after this, or where you are more generally just in the evaluation process?
Sure. We're still doing our initial demos. So we hope to make a short list by the end of next week. And then at that point, probably go in a little deeper into each of the ones that we've picked, and want to get this going as soon as possible.
Okay. Yes, you had said that. I said, what's your timetable? And you said, I need it yesterday.
Yeah.
I remember
Oh,
that
definitely.
now. Okay, that's easy enough. Now, has our 2 minutes passed?
So, you know
or...
what? I would just go, because it seems to me like no one's coming today. So I'm
Okay.
not sure what they're all doing.
Oh, and one last question. I'm assuming if you're sitting there waiting for your son to get out, that you probably have a hard stop at 4, or God knows something might even happen before then. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a full hour of this, so that's totally fine.
Okay. So I'd like to invest the first 5 minutes or so with a slideshow that will give you a couple of the concepts that I'd like for you to ask, that you sort of keep in mind as we go through the product.
Okay.
First of all, the obligatory About Us slide. We were founded in 2001. We are an entirely virtual company. We are located in 5 states, 2 Canadian provinces, with an offshore development team. We've worked with a bunch of clients whose logos you can see. I am told that only my mother and myself are interested in this slide, and that honestly she's not that interested. So unless you want more detail on this, this will be the fastest About Us slide on record.
Totally good.
When we think of LMS providers, one of the basic truths that I believe is that there is no one that does every single thing perfectly, and that each LMS or technology provider needs to sort of differentiate themselves on what they do best and admit the stuff that they don't do as well. For us, the thing that we are really noted for, the thing where we get the most people buying ours, is the learning paths, or process-based learning. And that's because if you look underneath it, we actually started life as social software, social media, but it was in 1987, so that term did not exist. And we only added the content features of an LMS in the early 2000s. So the second differentiator is that we very thoroughly integrate social and content learning, both formally in the learning paths and informally in communities. We also offer a somewhat unique approach to service, and that is our bumper-to-bumper service, which I'll talk about for a few seconds on the next slide. And we have, our belief is that there's a lot of stuff that people still end up doing manually around learning, like set up a meeting, where you actually have to think through who's coming. Is it going to be WebEx, face-to-face telephone? Should an agenda be sent out? Should a reminder be sent before the meeting? Is there some way of tracking responses? And all that should happen with a single click because we've got a computer. We call this learning process automation with easy buttons, and one of the things that we like doing is creating those for customers. We also have a built-in knowledge base for performance support, bottom middle, which I'm not going to be talking to you about today, and probably will not address the Kirkpatrick Level 3 evaluation system that we build into the product unless you express an interest in it. Really, of these, the two things that I suspect you'll be most interested in are Learning Paths, Learning Paths, Learning Paths, and possibly the bumper-to-bumper service.
That is true and correct.
Service is basically a service option as opposed to a la carte services. For a fixed fee, we handle the implementation, the first administrator training, the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth administrator trainings when people shift. Any additional reports that you want, we build in. Any additional notifications, we do them for you. And we assign a senior consultant who basically is available for, on demand for your lead administrator, so that there's somebody on our side, and this is way beyond sort of like customer support, help system stuff. This is basically anything how can I design a better learning path? How can I take advantage of some of the additional features I might not even know about? Can you give me a critique of this or that or the other thing? And so if you prefer, you can purchase this type of service package, which basically is sort of like when you buy a Toyota, and for 36 months, whatever breaks, they fix it. And that's our bumper-to-bumper service. Questions?
I'm sorry?
Questions?
Oh, no. Nope.
Okay. Now, I want to take the rest of the 5 minutes. I think I may have used all my 5 minutes, but I'm going to steal 2 more, and give you a little background on what we see as a learning path. The typical LMS has 3 types of learning activities: e-learning, assessment, sometimes classes, and simple assignments like submit this document for your manager to approve. We think that, unfortunately, most e-learning replicates the worst practices of education online, being lecture and multiple choice test. And if you're really trying to drive to proficiency, and again, that's sort of our feeling is we're in the readiness business, and to enable folks to be ready to do their jobs, they need to attain proficiency. And all too often, we do some training and then expect the manager, or hope that the person's manager will sort of polish things off. And we believe that hope is not a method. So our learning system has a number of additional types of learning. The ones in blue are the social learning activities. And you're going to see how our assignments are way different than anybody else's. But also, you can weave in a number of different social type of learning activities. But most importantly, we think of the learning process as having 2 phases, instruction and reinforcement. And you notice that in the typical LMS, there just isn't a lot of provision made for reinforcement, for structured coaching programs, peer feedback, anything like this. So insofar as, now not for your external audience, which I know is really very important, if not primary to you, but for your employee training, we think that having all of these tools or arrows in your quiver is very valuable. Let me stop and ask if you have any reactions to that.
No, I mean, I actually really like that. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Okay. In the typical LMS, they call a grouping of these activities a curriculum. In our system, we call a structured sequence of these activities a learning path. Now, a learning path is different than a traditional curriculum in that it embodies a true process, so that you might follow an e-learning with a WebEx where people can ask questions, but there's an instructional design, or possibly you might follow an e-learning with a face-to-face clinic, but in the middle you're going to put an assessment because you're not going to allow them in the face-to-face clinic if they haven't bothered to look at the e-learning. So the first thing is you're going to see a true learning process that not only includes but tracks the social learning just as SCORM tracks content, that involves the managers and the coaches to create a learning ecosystem. And you can create these learning paths in an ordered or self-directed way. And if they are ordered, you can also have them be cohort-based, so that you're going to have a class every 6 weeks, and that way, week 3, if you have some type of discussion, activity, everybody's sort of at week 3. So you can make very simple ones that are just self-paced, or you can use the cohort-based ones if you want to weave in social activities for things like your hypo leadership training, something like that. Again, questions?
Nope.
And this,
makes sense.
Hopefully this will help you make sense of what I'm going to show you. Okay, and then the last thing, very quickly, learning paths teach a skill, like spin selling model, call skills. You can group those learning paths together into a program like new sales training, or another one on product knowledge or advanced selling skills. You can group programs together into what we would call a curriculum, like sales school or leadership school or onboarding. And so this is what I'm going to show you, but having given you a couple slides, you'll now hopefully have a little better context for understanding it. So then with permission, I'll go and start showing you stuff. When I'm going to use two, browsers here, because I want to show you the administrator's experience, and I also want to show you the learner's experience. And the learner's experience is over here. So when Frank enters the system, he's going to see a landing page. This is not the landing page, it is a landing page, because these are all soft screens. In this particular landing page, he will always be able to come to the home page. He would be able to go to the community page for informal learning that you would not be using. He would be able to go to a support system or a knowledge base for more information on something. And he would be able to go from anywhere to the learning page that gives him a more complete learner dashboard, where the home page is a more abbreviated version of it.
Where does that you showed that support where there's information, where does that come from?
Great question. When we're talking about user-generated information, that's the community. And so, the right people can upload resources, quack, quack, quack. This is the policies and procedures. This is your IP instantiated into a workflow process, so that the person in this particular one, there's 4 steps to creating these meetings. Each of those steps is going to be expressed as a template. This one would be a process template, so purpose, who it involves, what the steps are, etc. The information is all the same way. And this pane here, rather than, if this were SharePoint, when you clicked on plan, you would have seen 50 files. We believe that in 30 seconds, a person 80% of the time should get what they need, and you have supporting files and all of the SCORM objects that are on your system, as well as any rich media that apply to this step can be here, and the social elements like reach out to an expert or post a question in the community forum. So all of these things can be woven together to create a true performance support system. This comes, to answer your question, from the top. In other words, there's a content manager for each one of these pages, or for every page, and that content manager is going to use WYSI WYSIWYG editors, or maybe it's a drop down, or in other words, but there's web controls here. Or if you want to add in certain resources, then if you click here, you get a flyout with your common resources. You can add any of your others to this flyout, and the resource just goes in here as you double click.
So if we had our own KB system, mm-hmm. we could then use that to feed this?
No, it depends on how you mean feed it. I guess if you wanted to, for example, you could put an iframe here that captured, something from your own system. But normally, and certainly any of these things, the data elements can be a SharePoint repository, or, and it's invisible to the user. The user just sees policy 1 and doesn't know it's coming, that the Word document is being drawn from an external system. But normally, the text part, which truthfully ends up sort of being the heart of it, where the user actually sees this, that's generally copied into this system from your source documents, so that it can be all put in these, in this template.
Okay.
The resources can be drawn from outside. The text could be in an iframe, I guess, but we've never. Then you'd lose your search. You'd lose, you'd lose a lot. The way people usually do it is they put the text right here.
Okay.
Okay. Now, most people, parenthetically, this is something a year in, right? You love our system, quack, quack, quack. You bought it. You don't build this first, if you know what I mean. This is something that you can sort of grow into. Okay, so the first point that I was making, and I'm in the wrong one here, is that these are actually soft screens. So the fact that we have a static thing here, your training team here, these are all widgets. And if you wanted to, the landing page, especially for your external audience, could be something that was just like this, except without the calendar. I mean, it could just be, as simple as that. So part of implementation is we design the look and feel of the user experience, as well as obviously the branding and, your colors, and, you don't like this, you like some other, basically we're taking your graphic elements usually from your website or your intranet, but then the widgets are then selected from, 30 different widgets and sort of arranged the way that you want them to create the user experience you're trying to create. So what you're seeing here is a user experience, not the user experience. Okay?
So is there, so it's more of a, what do I want to say, like a buffet style picking, or are we able to then use an API to actually code for ourselves?
No. No, this would be, here's what you can and can't do. When you're creating the layout, we have certain widgets that are built in, but then if you want to, you can just create your own widget. Like telesales links is something that I don't even know what's in it. And so if I bring it here, I just have to remember to get rid of this before I use this demo again. Then you can put in here in other words, this is right now just text, which happens to be a link, but this could actually be a JavaScript snippet or any other type of code, so that you could, because one of the things you were talking about was Salesforce integration, you could take a Google Calendar, leverage the Salesforce API, and put anything here that you want. But more than that, if you say, I just want certain people to see it, you can say it isn't visible to everybody, and this widget is only visible to the WYSIWYG group. And so the soft screen is such that the same exact screen can often be used for, let's say, your external versus your internal audience, because all of the widgets can be seen by just certain groups of people. So we don't open the API for you to do programming in here, but we do allow you to use these user-defined widgets to put any type of JavaScript or other scripting language that you want to make these dynamic in special ways to you. Did that answer your question?
Exactly, yep.
Okay. Now, the general workflow, now I'm talking for an employee right now, is one way or another, either from the home page or they come here or whatever. This is what we call the learner dashboard. And I'm really just going to be showing you two things before we then go into your use cases, learner dashboard being the first. The workflow is pretty simple. When these are things that either have been assigned to me, I'll show you that during the use cases, or that I've opted to take, which I'm going to show you now. The way I would opt to take it is in the catalog. All of these, again, are role-based. So these four are the only ones that are exposed to your external audience. This one is only exposed to your sales department. You see what I'm saying? So the catalog is going to be filtered by what the administrator believes that any given person should see by virtue of their role or virtue of groups that they're in. There are 5 different types of activities. There are e-learning courses, your SCORM stuff. There are assessments, which would either be SCORM assessments or tests that you create right in the system. There are classes, which would be live, WebEx, or face-to-face classes that are then scheduled in the system. There are learning paths, which is the second thing I'm going to show you. And there are assignments, which is our code word for when you're creating a course yourself that has that link to the panoply or whatever it's called thing, and then you want to follow that by an assessment they have to take and then a satisfaction survey. All of those things would be right here. To do this, I want to find one that is not in the learning plan and doesn't require approval, so because that's the simplest. The learner would click here, read the metadata, click on Move to Plan, and then, depending on what it was, they might see a play button, they might see, whatever it is, and they would actually find that that object is in their learning plan. When they have completed an object, it goes to their transcript, where they can print the certificate or print the whole transcript. You notice in the home page, just very simply, we just have the learning plan part. So in other words, again, all of this is soft screen stuff. We can expose or hide any of it, or make an abbreviated version here, and then a more detailed version here that includes the catalog and the transcript and other stuff. So that is the user workflow, which is the first thing that I wanted to tell you. And for your external audience, that can be a very simple workflow, which is just a list of the stuff that they've purchased. So again, let me stop and ask if you have any reactions to that. Oh, I should have been in the other browser, shouldn't I? Which is how Frank is going to be interacting with the system.
No, it seems straightforward.
Okay. The other thing that I did want to show you is what I talked about, the learning path. A learning path is all those different things, but to just demonstrate very quickly how these things can actually be put together with a design. In this case, I'm teaching the sales skills, and in our company, we use the spin selling model. But rather than just have the e-learning course, and this will launch the e-learning course on spin selling, and does everything that any LMS does. It bookmarks it and records how much time and records your score and all that sort of stuff. And it'll either pass or fail you depending on the test results. But after that, see, we should think of this as that's nice and everything, but getting the content, talking to somebody about the content is not learning. That's just transmitting content. After this, we might want to have office hours where every Wednesday, let's say, we have a Q&A session, and the person can sign up for the one of these that they want, and deep integration with WebEx. So at this point, that WebEx is scheduled. They'll get whatever emails your WebEx system sends them. This is marked as in progress, and as soon as they attend the WebEx, that's what actually turns this activity green. You might then have another e-learning course. Who knows? You might then have deepening the learning by having them answer questions in your support tool. Now, that could be our support tool or any support tool, but the notion is that we are now, I just have one question here, we are now asking them to go to the tool, because that's what they're going to have afterwards, and answer questions about its use. If it's a leadership development thing, they do a lot of case studies. Actually, they do some in sales training too. So why not push your scenario in a PDF here, or you have it in a thing. And all this is assuming that you can't get them together in a classroom, but sort of showing how we can create that same robust experience online. After looking at the scenario, they are asked to answer the question, then come back a couple times during the next 7 days and post responses to what other people say on how you're going to address these objections. So I read all this stuff, and I post my response, and then I can view it, et cetera, et cetera. I can be notified when other people have responded, and I set this one to 1, but in other words, the way it was written, this should only show green after they've responded 3 times. Now, this is subtle, but what it really does for you as the instructor is it enables you to now have a virtual classroom, to have an asynchronous learner-to-learner interaction, to have a face-to-face thing. Remember, we can schedule the classes right there in the product. So here, that class just becomes one of the 10 things you need to do. You can do post-training reinforcement, like call planners or leadership planners, where once a week you're asking a structured set of questions. And this is why I told you our assignments are a lot more than just post this file, because what happens here is the learner answers these questions. And what it says is your coach will give you feedback within a day. Now, the coach over here has a coach dashboard. And in that coach dashboard, if there's any assignment that needs certifying, they can do it right here. But this single glance dashboard enables the coach to see exactly where everybody is in that learning plan. And for every learning plan that they're a coach of, they can see this right here from the home page. So this reinforcement actually gets done. The coaching gets done. It's not hope as a method anymore. There's a structured series of assignments. It could be post a file too. I mean, what the heck? But this is the stuff a lot of people do on the phone. And so if it's the learner talking about stuff for 25 minutes, the coach is stuck for 25 minutes. Here, the learner may take 20 minutes to answer these questions. The coach, will generally take 5 to 8 minutes to give the coaching, and that's it. There's a zillion other features of learning paths, but that's not the purpose of this call. The purpose of this call is to sort of give you enough sense of what a learning path is, so you sort of understand the user experience. As I complete things, I get footprints, sort of for the sex appeal or whatever. I'm putting, some people, it's all courses, all e-learning, that's fine too, but this is one that would be very, very robust in terms of integrating the content and social learning. Let me stop and ask if you have any questions about our implementation of what we call learning paths.
No, I really like the concept of that product to show what you're learning rather than just, watch this video.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
yeah, no,
now
this is great.
okay. And then remember I said that you can build them into programs and curricula? As an example, here's our sales curriculum, which is built of 3 programs. See, this one's just a standalone learning path. That's where we were for simplicity. And then your sales onboarding program might then consist of a number of different learning paths. And I hope you'll forgive me. I've blown everything up so that you can read this easily. If I shifted back down to a normal view of the screen, you wouldn't find this weird wrapping, but it's harder for you to read it over WebEx, over GoToMeeting.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah, so the notion being that all of these learning paths can then be built up into your your onboarding, where it could be week 1, week 2, first 30 days, whatever you want. Okay. If there are no questions, I'm just going to start going down the list of use cases until we sort of run out of time.
Go right on.
Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll bring this little puppy over here. Now, you're familiar with it, but it's more for me than for you. Okay, log into the system. A technical, okay, assign the planet group. Okay, so, not Frank. This is Bill does this stuff. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to create some of the content that goes into this. And so I'm going to actually upload a SCO because that's going to be one of the things that we use in this. And so from my dashboard, I simply say, go. So that was 1 click. This is clicks. Now you can't count this because I have to look for the darn thing, and I can't spell. So this is really the longest thing, is finding the file. I click import. It'll just ask me 1 question. Is this an assessment or is this an e-learning module? And I can also put it in a category. And I've now put this in the system, like 5 mouse clicks. So that was not the use case, but now first it says I log into the system. Well, I'm going to log in the way everybody else does. But because of who I am, I see this and this, where Frank, in the same screen, doesn't see the dashboards or the manage. So the first thing is log in, and then the second was create this plan. Okay, well, I've uploaded all my different materials and created the tests and whatever else I'm supposed to do. But right now I'm doing a plan.
Where was I authenticated from?
Well, it depends on you. I think in your case, it would be directly authenticated into us because you have such an external audience. But if you were like a 5,000, employee firm or whatever, and they were just employees, we'd probably set up an HRIS synchronization and SSO in 1 of 2 or 3 different ways that your IT weenies want it done.
Okay.
But your external audience would always authenticate this way, I suspect. Okay, so we need to set up a rule. And our rule is going to be very simple. This is going to be Cicero's rule. We're going to say that if a person is in the high potential group, then we're going to want them to take the courses that we have by tomorrow, because we're pretty aggressive about this. Having created that rule, we can then add any number of learning activities to it. Okay, this is a problem. When I blow up the screen, let's see, and the pop-ins are going to be unhappy here. So let me just change my view temporarily to just somewhat smaller. I think that'll do it. Okay. Cicero's rule, edit, the selector, and we want them to take this and that learning path and a classroom thing and this e-learning course. And so basically, when anybody logs in who's in the hypo group or whose department is electrical, or a combination of those two, then they will automatically be assigned to that, what we call learning plan, meaning the things that they are assigned to take. And when they go to their, well, they would see it here, but whenever they go to their learning plan, and if they change, you know, they go to the plumbing department instead, then any of these that they haven't done fall off the learning plan and the plumbing ones come on. So I think it's pretty simple. You simply set up the rules based on profile elements and groups, and you assign the things to it and set it and forget it. When they log in, that's what they'll see. Okay. Now, you also said, what about a single user? Well, we can assign activities. It's the same sort of thing, but I'm just going to assign them to user 51, and the activity that user 51 needs to take are these two, and they need to do them. I'll do a different type of due date. Whenever they're hired, they have to do it hire date plus 60. So that would be how you do the individual plans. Use case questions?
Nope, so far so good.
Now, new hire, I guess that's your system that's going to sync with ours?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know, that it happens. I mean, there's nothing else I can tell you. But to show you what is happening done manually, you can either, when you create a user, this one isn't set up for it, but you can say what group should they be in right here. Or when you create users via a spreadsheet, create user. So if you want to create one, you're doing synchronization, but in other words, this is sort of the manual version. Then you could add all of your users and put them in groups right all at the same time. But the groups are changeable. You know, someone might go from the electrician to the whatever, or join the hypo group, which they're nominated for every February. So we create a group, we type in hypo, and we click submit. We assign the members by selecting the hypo group, and then we can, you know, search for only the ones that have Q2 in their user ID or name. We can show everybody that is not a member of this group or that is a member of the group. We can even have cascading groups by assigning this group. So everyone who's in the contractors group, so in other words, this could say the Maine group, New Hampshire group, and Vermont group, and we're assigning all of them to a group called the New England group, so to speak. So you were saying, how do we add them to a group, added audit? Well, we just did that. They're audit because they're in that group, and we set up that rule. That's already done. And they have access to the prescribed learning. All that will be in their learning plan. And other ad hoc materials they might be interested in. Well, this gets back to the catalog. Because they are in the hypo group, they see 100 things here where everybody else just sees 90. So there's 10 that they're seeing that nobody else does because they're in that group. And the manager and user, okay, so let's do the manager all together because there's a bunch of these things. The user tracking progress, you've already seen. The manager role is very interesting, I think, in our system. Well, it's interesting to me, you know, maybe nobody else, me and my mother. Okay, there's a dashboard for managers. That dashboard, because some activities may require a manager to approve before you can enroll. In other words, if you're assigned, you're assigned. But for the ones that are optional, there are some that might require manager approval. That'll appear right here. There are some that in order to finish the activity, the manager may need to certify. That's right here. But in addition, of course, you'll get all of this in an email. And in fact, with every dashboard, you can control which notifications you receive. Like, I just want to see this one on my dashboard, but I want to get this one via email, et cetera, et cetera. The reports are obvious. You know, the learners' activity completions by learner. I'll just say all of my reports. I'd better keep it this year because I don't, you know, this is a demo site, I don't know. And I don't want to include the inactive users. And I see the report. Looks like I don't have any. And I know you were, I think it was you, wasn't it, that was very concerned that you can report all this to Excel, export it so then you can manipulate it?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go into reporting separately, but let's just, you know, let me just keep going because I'm on a roll. The manager sees the names of all their direct and indirect reports. If I want to see how good old Frank is doing, and this is a totally different concept than just the reports, I'm now seeing his learning plan. So he's sitting there by me, and we're doing our development planning for next year for him, and I see that he's done these things. He's in the middle of these. He finished these, and you know, Frank, I think honestly, since you said you want to be a manager, we should actually assign interview and hiring fundamentals to you, because that's something that you'll need to take as a manager. I don't care when you do it. We'll just assign it. But also, I think that you need to do a ride-along with Harry, because he's really the best at doing whatever. And so let's just do an ad hoc assignment right here, so that I'll say ride along with Harry, and here's what you're going to do. And you can just self-certify, or I want to certify when it's done. So to your questions here, the manager logs into the system, accesses their reports, and downloads the data on their direct report, but also can do all of this stuff, assigns new content to the direct reports, assigns a standalone video that's not already part of a learning plan to a single user. So all of these things can be done right here. And so let me just stop and ask if you have any questions about the notion of how a manager leverages the manager dashboard to do stuff.
No. I think everything makes sense.
Okay. Content manager. Now these, let's see, that's user. Okay, so it's 5 and 6 that are the content managers. Okay, so I showed you how they would upload a Captivate SCO, but I wanted to show you your Panoply or whatever it is. So I'm going to add a new assignment, and this one, what's the name of the company again?
Panopto.
That's what I said. Panopto.
That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah, that's my instructions here, whatever. Now, this is going to be a web resource, which I happen to have saved right here. And this is for HighPose. Just for, you know, to be kind to them, oops, I'm going to, you know, let them know about how long it's going to take. Now, yes or no, you tell me, does it, no, I want no, because I want to be able to show you the user doing this. The certification, let's certify it by an assessment. And so I'll select one of the assessments on the system, and it's available. It's one of our summer hires training courses, and let's put a satisfaction survey associated with it. We'll use this one right here. And now that I've created Panopto course, if I go over to Frank and I repaint his learning page, and I click on the catalog, and I'll just look at the assignments because it'll be quicker, and I look for Panopto course, and I read all the stuff about it, and I say, okay, I want to do that. I'm going to move that to my learning plan. And now that it's on my plan, I see a go button. Yeah, I would also see it over there. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay. First mistake. Okay. And now we'll learn how to edit one of these little puppies. HTTP. Yeah. Well, that is it. HTTP Tableau Viewer APX ID, because I just did the darn thing right before we got on the phone. Let me just try clicking on it again. The resource could have been error in this. Click. Well, darn it. I must have copied the URL wrong because I really did. Let me try if this one is the same thing. There it is. Okay, that was the one I did right before we got on the phone. So basically now I watch my Panopto object, and because we set this for a this one isn't the other one, if you see what I mean. This one is a self-certification, but on the other one, because we said via assessment, this would say take assessment, and then it would launch the assessment. And then after I take the assessment, it would link me to the satisfaction survey. So here you were asking in terms of content management. Okay, log into the system, and just depending on what your rights are, you'll be able to see the stuff or not. Adds link to material outside of LMS, yep. Make it available to a certain set of users. Just to show you, because I mean that's the whole point here, is the library of here. Okay, I'll just do this one. Where's set permissions? Here we go. I'm going to only allow this particular resource to be seen by those two groups, or I could have, done specific individuals, but generally you don't do that. So how you, where are we here? Making it available. This is for optional taking it, because if it's assigned, it's just going to be assigned. So with any of these, you can set, them to any set of users. And I think that addresses all of the content manager stuff. I think these we could just talk through. User logs in, yeah. They view a list, yeah. That's the learner dashboard. Add an ad hoc course to the list. Actually, we don't have that right now. We're hoping to get that into the next version. Right now, the manager can add the ad hoc assignments, but we're going to be adding this hopefully in the next version. The user has moved to another department. Well, we talked about this. Because the rule is set to the profile field equals plumbing, that's why they see these versus the other. Of course, anything they've completed is still there. It's still in the transcript. It's just the stuff that they haven't done disappears off the learning path, and the new stuff that they're supposed to do appears. A sales manager logs in. Now, they see these separate from other departments. Well, again, here, all of the sales stuff we make visible only to the sales group, or you could do it a different way if it's not a question of permissions. In the category right here, if you say, I just want the sales training objects, then they just see the sales trading objects, or you could totally forbid them by using the permissions. They have the ability to add new content to the sales groups. They would do that just as the administrator does it. Yeah, it's everything the same. They choose training models. Okay, well, this is the same thing that the administrator does. The manager looks at upcoming, well, we did that. So when I showed you the manager from the manager's dashboard assigning objects, in point of fact, I chose one of the classes, that's an ILT, as well as some e-learning. And oh my God. So the other thing here is the notification engine. So there are like 55 notifications with the system. So let's say the class notifications would be class is canceled, that'll go to enrolled, a different one goes to waitlisted users. This goes to the administrator that 3 days before and we haven't met the right enrollment. And the way each of these notifications work, and in other words, this is what's supplied, and part of implementation is we go through these 55 and you say yes, no, and we make them inactive or active. And you can create your own just as easily as we could by just choosing, it's all sort of drop downs. This is a class notification, the instructor's going to get it, when it's at capacity, et cetera, and these notifications are then automatic, but they are personalized because each notification fires off to the appropriate person an email template. And the email template basically says, you recently requested Psych 101, or your manager, manager name is reached at, I think it's actually this format, manager phone, So all of the emails here are totally automated, but they're also totally personalized. So when you ask here about receiving, I'm assuming Outlook is their email client because we're just sending an email to their email address. We can set up a notification to send one immediately, send one 4 days in advance that includes the class agenda, send one the day before as a final reminder, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we have 5 more minutes. Let me, you were talking about, okay, so uploads the link to the video. I showed you that. When we uploaded the e-learning course, that, as long as it's a SCORM object, that could have been an assessment instead. But the other thing you didn't ask about, but I suspect you might be interested in, is that you can actually create these tests right here in the product. And as soon as you've created it, you can add questions from the question bank, or you can create questions of a variety of different types. This will be the quickest one. The world is flat, false, submit, and then you can then add that question to the thing, and now you've created a test, and that test then has such things as, what do you call it, item analyses, so that you can actually show, I don't know how many, I mean, this is a demo site, so there we go. How many good questions, how many easy, how many, all the stuff that you would see in an item analysis. That's if you create the test here in the thing, and you can also then obviously create your satisfaction surveys as well. Now we have like 3 minutes left. I did not address the e-commerce piece, but basically in an e-commerce environment, you may allow existing users to come in or new users to come in, once you have said, I want to use e-commerce, then when you create these objects, you will have the opportunity. Now, this is our trunk site, so it doesn't look pretty. I'm just taking you here so you can see this. So that, let's say this is one of the things that I want to make into an e-learning, to a product, which is what do you call it, a e-commerce available. So I'm going to add a product, and this product is going to expire in 30 days, and it'll use this registration code, which was obviously generated. And then we could have the same thing that expired in 90 days or whatever. So you add products into the system, and what you were really talking more about was what we call product libraries. So you can also create a product library where this library has these, and you've seen this screen before, has these particular things in it, and this particular library will expire, gives you access to these 3 objects for 30 days. And there was, again, a code. So then when the person is logging in and they're an existing user, they put in that code, and if they're a new user, they fill this out, and it creates their user ID on the way in. That user ID, and they will have access to those things for 30 days. If they have 3 things, 30, 60, and 90 days, their user ID will actually expire at the end of 90 days. So that's sort of how we handle the whole e-commerce thing as quickly as I could.
Cool. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess we didn't set this up, but normally there would then be a add registration code, because you saw you could only add 1, right? But once you're here, you could also add more registration codes for things that you bought. Okay. So, it is exactly 4 o'clock. Do you have any questions? Or in particular, are there things that you didn't see that are important? Because I hate to lose business when we actually have that feature. I just didn't happen to show it.
No, I think you touched on all the things that we're going to be looking at. What I'll do is I will then sit with the other people, because I realized that I think some of them didn't get my invite, and so I'll be sitting with them reviewing this presentation, and we can kind of hash through it and see where we stand.
Great.